Going once, going twice, sold! You're listening to The Property Pod, an accessible and easy way to get into or help understand the goings-on of the property market. Join Aaron, John and Pat as they discuss all things real estate, most likely get sidetracked, and then try and rein it all back in as they present The Property Pod.
Alrighty, welcome back to the Property Pod. Here we go again. We've shaken off the first show jitters. We've gone through the second show troubles, gone through the third, and here we are at lucky number 4. Thank you for joining us and listening. We've had a really good response so far and are really enjoying putting the show together, so we'll continue to do so.
I'm loving it because we're already 3 more further than I thought we were going to be, so we're cruising.
Well, we're 3 more further than John's microphone ever got us.
That is very true.
So we appreciate the initiating thought, John, but here we are in the studio, loving life and podding our butts off.
Well, let's be honest. This setup is a lot better than just the little mic sitting on the desk. That's for sure.
Isn't it amazing though that it can all the catalyst of an idea started with I'm going to start a podcast. I've got a microphone, and then Pat's like, "You guys are going to start a podcast."
Oh, you've got a microphone.
Oh, you've got a microphone.
One up you, John.
Well, no, this is more like 5 up.
We even went and bought a specific table just to create this thing. So, yeah, we've gone all out. We're 4 in, and we better make sure we make this all worthwhile.
Anyway, no, it's good to be here.
Yeah, that being said, we will welcome our regular panel. I've got John McGregor and Patrick Berry with me.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, everyone.
How are we all feeling on this fresh Tasmanian morning?
Well, we're doing the typical Tasmanian thing, which you'll complain about the weather regardless of it. It's either too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, too moist, too sunny. Tasmanians never go, geez, it's a nice day today.
And I must be too stupid because I'm here in a T-shirt.
Yeah, you looked hardcore rocking around with your polo to get coffee.
We had
No one messes with Pat getting coffee, not on a day like this.
He even had the puffy jacket on, like the Tasmanian puffy jacket, but he's like, I don't need sleeves on mine. Ain't no thing. Were you one of the guys that only wore shorts to school?
Was indeed, yeah.
You had like a challenge where...
There was no challenge, just on my pants. I'd rather wear shorts.
So, I feel like, did you ever wear trousers to school?
He just
never had them.
No.
Didn't have the option.
Never owned them. I had shorts and those socks that went all the way up to your knees.
Yeah. Per uniform regulation.
Yeah, it's good. You needed pants.
I think most children feel the same too, don't they?
Alrighty, guys. Well, let's get back on track, or let's start the track. We've got a little bit of follow-up from the past, from previous episodes, some stuff we talked about. And I wanted to mention, John, the question that you answered last week, RE, Rosehaven, and the stories. Those people did listen again, Patrick.
Ooh.
Yes. And again, I'm going to do another shout out. Lots of people seem to be interested in the world of John McGregor. I ran into a mutual friend, Mr. Samuel Morey.
Oh, great.
Shout out to him. Ran into him at the Tassin on Friday night, and he's a listener.
Yep.
And he loves the bands.
Oh, that's excellent.
He loves the bands. He said he's been dying for a podcast with John's voice on it, and now he's happy to be able to listen to it. So shout out to Sammy.
My man.
It was good to run into you, and it was good to hear that you are a Property Pod listener.
I think we'll have to get him a... just keep an eye, mate. There might be some sweet Property Pod merch coming your way.
We'll send him some swag. So it'll be Sam Morey and Pat's son wearing Property Pod swag. If you build it, they will come. All right, so let's go into a little bit of property talk straight away.
Are we actually going to do that today, or are we just going to keep talking shit?
If you listen to the intro, it says...
Rein it all back in again. Yeah.
It literally says we'll get sidetracked. So the track's been sighted, and now we're back.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so let's talk about what's happened since the federal election. I was the one that did the research, so I'd be happy to start it off, but I don't want to...
No, mate, go for it.
I don't want to railroad over everyone.
Oh, it's a good opportunity for you to talk real estate.
I know.
You always reckon you don't know anything about it, and you've done your research.
Hey, this is the purpose of the podcast. Remember, it's an easily accessible one. Now you're taking the reins.
And I learned some stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, hey, guys, I think I know something.
Yeah, do it.
So there's been a little mini housing boom since the election.
What do we got?
So I think they're saying that there's been a rise of about 11% attendance in nationwide in in home.
Open homes, I think it was.
That's the word.
Yeah, so there's different apps that a lot of agencies use now to register attendees when they arrive at a property. And the beauty of apps is it gives out data. And so Domain have actually been able to report that they've had a 11% increase last weekend at open homes. And Tassie actually had a 7% increase, which is pretty impressive.
Far out.
Did you guys have any open homes on the weekend that you guys were presenting at?
What happened last Saturday?
So Johnson, no.
Oh yeah, no, there was one in Newtown, but there was four groups through that one. It was about sort of what we're anticipating given the price range and where it is.
So there wasn't an 11% rise or 7%, sorry, for Tassie in the attendance of the one
Of
you were at.
my open home, not specifically, no.
7% is only a quarter of a person.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing
Imagine
is,
if just two legs started walking in.
Or a baby.
oh my god, there's so many weird legs.
I love that you went to a baby, but I just went to a half,
Just
just some legs.
Just some
coming in
legs.
with
Yeah. Then next to it, there's a head just rolling into the room. But mind you, where I suppose the thought then, where anecdotal evidence is really not a good one to go by, because the other thing too, price bracket. Each market has like a sub market in terms of its price range, its premium properties in a certain area versus ones that everyone's it's accessible to everyone. This particular property, for example, was which is really sort of geared towards an Airbnb market.
Okay, yep.
But that said, then is it another one that was in Lenna Valley? I think there was nearly in total. By the time that we finished with the inquiries, we would recorded about 51 response. 51
Yeah, so
inquiries
it's a
on the
completely different appeal to that property to the one that you had the open home for on the weekend.
Yeah, so humbly, I think I'd much more trust the statistics showcasing that on average there actually is an increase in the activity in the market. Not but. So that's really exciting to hear, actually.
And even though we don't do auctions really here in Hobart, I believe there's about a 60% increase in auction clearances. Oh, not 6% increase, 60% auction clearance rate this last weekend. So basically 60% of all homes that went up for auction actually sold, which is apparently the highest number they've had in several months.
So is that for Tassie or
that's nationwide again?
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
a lot of these stats that we were able to source is nationwide, but it is an indicator that properties even in Sydney and Melbourne, where they have been a little bit more quiet, are starting to sell and start to move a little bit easier as well.
Well, that if all of a sudden they've had a pullback of 10%, it's not a big deal, like we discussed before. If someone's been holding onto the property over the last 4 or 5 years, and they're having to move, sell and take a hit, but they've obviously, they've gained 30%, but now they might have, gained 20%. But from a buyer's perspective, I suppose now seeing that they might have been waiting on the sidelines going, oh, geez, the market's cooled off a lot. It's like, well, I'm searching for a bargain.
Yep.
Now they're going, well, okay, time to get back in.
Well, yeah, I think the other thing I noticed in the report that I did the research on.
We're going to really keep milking that, aren't we?
I'm going to milk it all day long. This is the day I get to be an expert. Was that appraisals are up across Tassie and across the country just in the last fortnight since the election. So I think it's up by 34%. And
which is huge. Like, I think the nationwide was only 10. So for Tassie to be up 34% in appraisals, that's
smoking
a
it.
massive number.
Was that number coming from those
it's from a domain report.
So domain report again, was it?
Yeah, Domain have pulled it out of CMA's been generated out of Pricefinder, their research company.
Right, okay.
So obviously you and
People
me
making a request?
Yeah, you and me both used Upbeat data, the competitor, but it's an indicator that there's more appraisals being done.
That's it. And I think too, though, that there is the function for consumers to access that either purchased or otherwise, isn't there?
I believe so, yeah. I think they have a public side where you can actually go buy your own report. So it's good to see that there potentially could be some new stock coming into the marketplace. Hobart's desperate for it. Obviously, there's a lack of homes for sale, and there has been for quite some time. And that backs up what Jason was saying a couple of weeks ago as well. He said that he felt that towards the end of this year, we'd see a little bit more stock come onto the marketplace, which would be helpful for everyone.
Well, I guess with that too, we've had a lot of people having to wait on the sidelines with they need to sell their properties but needing to buy at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's just been an almost impossibility for them. So if all of a sudden that starts to move, everyone's moving at the same time, there's the possibility for everyone to be seeing.
Subject to sales, we haven't seen them for a couple of years now because people haven't been able to, and that stopped people from moving because they're worried they're not going to be able to buy something after they've sold.
Yeah, exactly.
This is like a clause in the contract of
So
we'll buy this subject to the sale of our property.
Yeah, that's right. So if you decided you wanted to sell your place here in Glenorchy to change, but you'd make it subject to your place selling first. So you've got no commitment to buy the new one until your old home has sold.
And is that something that's common or was common and it's not anymore?
Yeah, it hasn't been because their homes have been selling too fast. That anyone that wants to make it subject to that can't get their home sold fast enough before a finance buyer comes along.
Yeah, sure.
So with more stock coming onto the market, those clauses will start to come back in.
Yep.
And that'll help those buyers be able to upgrade to the next place as well.
Yeah, or downsize a lot in most cases.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. Most subject to sales are more, empty nesters trying to downsize to a retirement home or something
Or just
like
a
that.
smaller unit or something that
Yeah.
they can manage without having to
That's
do all the
it.
gardening and everything.
All their capital's in the home. They want to be able to free up a little bit of it. They don't need the big family home anymore. But they haven't been able to do it because they're worried about not having
selling
anywhere to go.
Yep.
I think the other thing that we found too is now it shows that the average Australian moves. It used to be every 7 years, but now it's every 9 years. And when you have people that have been around sitting in their property even for 20 years, I think a lot of them weren't anticipating just how quickly their house was going to move over the last few years. So all of a sudden, where they last time the last experience might have been waiting 30 to 60 days before anything might begin, the house was going on the market, and then they was presented with a contract above their expectations within 48 hours, wanting them to be moved in straight away. So even their expectation of how long this process was going to take was just vastly accelerated. And so we had a lot of buyers calling our office just saying, "Look, I've sold my house. I need a place. I've got nowhere to go." It's like, well, we'll do our best to help you, but that was just a reality for them, and it was a high quality problem. They had a good price at the front end, but nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go on the back end.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess from there, that's probably actually a really good way to segue into something else we were looking into this week is shortage of rentals. So not only shortage of properties for people to move into, like you just discussed, but there was a Gumtree ad that was...
Yeah, I can't believe this. This is crazy.
Yeah, you've
Once
seen
again,
this,
you
John?
did the research, so you tell the story
Tell the
as.
story.
So there's this Gumtree ad that was posted for a hallway in North Hobart, up for rent for $75. So I'll just pull up the...
So you didn't actually get the room. Your room to live in.
So it's legitimately
You're literally just renting a hallway with a bed in it.
that's
For $75.
Now I did read that article. Now, didn't it say there was 2 couples living in the house?
Yeah.
already?
I think it was 3 guys already or something along the lines of...
Now, my question is, were they just trying to cash in on the shortage of housing, or were they trying to help out, or can they not afford the rental themselves, so they had to offset it by bringing another person into it?
And when you've already got what seems to be 3 or 4 people living in the house,
How does living in a hallway work?
I don't know. It's just a bed, like like you were. I don't know. Just got.
It's crazy to think, like I remember living in uni houses and you'd always have blokes sleeping on the couch
Doesn't
or
matter where,
people
yeah.
just coming and flopping their bodies wherever they would be, and you'd just be like, oh, this would be the way to do it. But to then think $75 for a hallway for a week, and that seems like a really good idea. Like the guys were obviously, yep, this is what we're going to do.
This is that's gonna pay for our booze every weekend.
Well, no, it's funny. I actually hadn't thought about it the way that Pat just said. Like, what if they can't afford the rent, and so they're like, "Oh, this is a way that we can afford it." I just thought of it as more of a. I guess I looked at it the humorous side of things, but it's
Yeah,
actually really concerning.
Well, a couple of things that when I looked at it that probably frustrates me more than anything is how it's really sold as a catastrophe without actually asking a few extra questions. So all of a sudden, this one ad on Gumtree with who knows what the circumstances or motivations are, and then it's an indicated that property is in absolute crisis, and we need to jump to conclusions because someone advertised a hallway on Gumtree. Now, immediately I was thinking the same question as you is, all right, well, how many people were in the house? Then the article said maybe 3 or 4. So there seems to be adequate people to cover the rent. Are they just then trying to top up? There's a couple of things with legislation. There's no, were they attempting to sublet the property as well, or were they just trying to tag on another person to the lease? But one of the things that I think there might have been politicians in the article as well were just jumping on it to use it as a soundbite to push push an agenda, which I think is really dangerous in those circumstances. Because for me, I'm sort of more on your side, Aaron, where look, it's actually just quite a humorous article, and I'd be interested to learn a bit more.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a good way of getting into the idea of what the actual real deep-seated issue is. Because I was like, oh, that's hilarious. Like, I can't believe that. But then, Pat's raised a really good point, and then going through the article that was in the Mercury, you actually kind of deep dive into it. You're like, oh, this is quite a serious issue.
The bigger picture, yeah.
And it's a hot topic at the moment. Like ABC Hobart had a post up on their Facebook page this week with 461 comments of asking the question, how would you solve Hobart's housing crisis? And everyone has an opinion on what needs to be done. It's pretty crazy. Some are indicating that they fear that Airbnb has had a factor on that, with people obviously renting out their homes to that marketplace instead on short term rather than doing the long term rental. So that's taken rentals out of the Hobart marketplace. It was really interesting reading through all these different comments as to how people think that it needs to be rectified. A lot obviously think more housing needs to be built. Housing needs to become more affordable and needs to become more of a standard item. Like public housing should be similar to how we look at roads, how they're a necessity. Housing should be a necessity, but it's not currently looked at this way.
Well, there's a bit of a change at national level. So the REIA had been pushing for a long time to have a dedicated public housing minister, which has just been approved now. So that whereas I think it might have fallen under the branch of the Treasury. If someone knows about this specifically, please correct me. But there'll actually be a dedicated housing minister specifically for housing now.
Nationwide.
Yes.
Yeah, wow.
So if I'm not sure if states will replicate that model.
Yep.
But I mean that's a good step in the right direction. At least for all the talk, is there's going to be a dedicated person that people can actually refer back to and be answerable to.
Yeah, cool.
One of the things about Airbnb as well is, it is quite a it's a fascinating beast, because where I suppose the fundamental problem comes from a population increase and not enough housing. Like that's realistically the bare bones. The supply and demand thing always falls back there. So then the nuances come into play. So the Airbnb website actually releases pretty good transparent statistics as far as I'm aware.
Yep.
Where if you look through, like the Hobart and Southeast, if that accumulated, that encompassed the municipalities of Glenorchy, Huon Valley, Hobart, etc. And it encompassed around about, I think it was around 3,000 homes that have been taken out of the long-term rental market in supply of the holiday market. And of that, on average, most of them are only let about a third of the year. So obviously some are probably at 90%, some might be a bit more, some mid. But on generally speaking, even the Airbnbs are only let for about 100, for about a third of the...
So there's people out there who are trying to rent out hallways for $75, but then there's properties that are sitting there vacant
90% of the year.
90% of the year because they're waiting for people to give them top dollar.
Still make as much money over the course of a year as they can renting it out full time without the fear of damage, without the worry of constant people in the home.
Putting on a property manager to look after it and stuff for you. So
then the statistic that doesn't tell you though is that obviously some people are still like our clients. We had a property in Lenna Valley. They'd held on to this property after it was a long-term investment for 2 years vacant, just so they could travel back and forth between Canberra. So there would be a lot of people in that Airbnb pocket as well that are going, well, I'm coming to Tasmania every 6 months. May as well gain some some income out of it, because it can't be a long-term rental property. And secondly, if you looked at those statistics that we looked at Domain with the volume of tourism that's increased over Tasmania, the Airbnbs as well would still be filling a void of demand of holiday, tourist accommodation that otherwise probably wouldn't be available in just a regular hotel situation.
So what do we need more hotels in Hobart, John? Is that...
just skyscrapers everywhere.
well, skyscrapers.
Way to alienate all our listeners, John.
Well, I think the reason why I point a lot of these things out is because we can obviously be quick, really quick to judge on what our opinion is and agenda. The problem is that there's so many, the tentacles reach in so many different directions over so many pockets that these kind of we've got to try and look at these, look at the big problem, which is a population increase, not enough housing, and then if we take that little pocket, what does that mean? How does that reflect out? And how can we then address that issue in a small pocket? Because if you just do a blanket policy or something that covers everything, it's just not going to be effective.
And I think that's a very good point. And as far as new housing goes, like there's no shortage of places being built in Hobart at the moment. I don't think there's a single builder that works in Hobart that doesn't have 12, 18 months worth of work already booked up.
Yep.
I'm trying to get a builder just to come and renovate my house, and that's causing me headaches.
I think the real problem in that is that, yes, there's probably, over 1,000, 1,500 homes currently under construction in Hobart, but that's to fix some demand. But while they take 4 to 5 months to build a home, more demand's coming in while they're building that, so they can't actually
catch up.
Yeah. So it's a hard one because the government's offering great incentives for first-home buyers and builders. They're offering good incentives for you to sort of construct a new home. But if you can't get it built quick enough, it doesn't ease the pressure.
No.
As far as like housing needs. And the government is working with a couple of charity organisations as well, and they've got like 600 homes under construction in the Bridgewater Gagebrook area. There's some down in Rokeby and Clarendon Vale under construction as well. There's some big projects happening around Hobart to fix affordable housing, but they just can't build enough of them fast enough.
And how's the because you've been working with them in those projects as well, haven't you, mate? So what's the uptake on them been like? Because I think it's been a phenomenal idea.
Yeah, so I work with a charity company out of Bridgewater. They're one of the guys that I think have got 500 currently under construction or in the pipeline for the next couple of years. So stuff that's already pre-scheduled to be constructed. They sell about 20% of what they build and retain the other 80% for, affordable housing for tenants. Out of the 20% that we sell, all first-home buyers or owner-occupiers have bought them. Cool. They've been really popular. Obviously, new builds are always popular with a lot of people, but yeah, it's just that shortage. Like we've got lists of people wanting to buy homes, and we just can't get these brand new homes. So we've got lists for obviously people that want to buy in the northern suburbs, but we also have ones that want to take advantage of these great opportunities with the grants and that, but they can't get a home or get a block of land because it sells too fast, or there's too much of a waiting list and they need something sooner.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned skyscrapers before, John, and it's something that's very touchy subject here in Hobart. But say they were to put up high rises or kind of high density housing kind of places in the city, kind of similar to what the UTAS are doing with their student accommodation. Is that something that could help with this issue, the kind of rental crisis?
Oh man, that's way above my pay grade. But like, I said that in jest because for me, there's a little sort of a story I like to say is one thing I do love about the picture of Hobart is that you take a photo. You could take a photo of Sydney, Tokyo, New York, and you could just do, if you shot it in a certain way, there'd just be high rises, and you really couldn't differentiate the way that which city it is. But you take a photo of Hobart in multitude of different directions, and you know that it's iconic to it. So I think it's really important that whatever development is scheduled or designed in the city is that it can still keep that unique. I hate using the word uniqueness, but I'll run with it. Yep. Uniqueness that is Hobart.
At what point does Hobart have to evolve? Like, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Love it. It's awesome feel that Hobart has. I love how it's positioned against the waterfront and the skyline with the mountain behind.
Yep.
But at what point do we have to look forward for the future? Like, if we don't keep developing, we don't keep enhancing, what opportunities are going to be here for people to stay?
Well, I think that most of from what bugger, I'll just have an opinion on it.
I'm not sitting on this bench no more.
May as well talk out of school of my personal knowledge, but let's see where this goes while I think out loud. Look, the problem is that, again, if we focus just on building more properties or high rise in Hobart, that's just centralising all the traffic to go in the one direction, and it's going to cause more congestion problems. I think people that are living in Kingston and Sorrel, Tranmere, they're already starting to feel where it's just coming to a lockhead where the roads aren't coming in. So I don't think that's necessarily the answer.
Sounds like high rises in Glenorchy is the answer.
There you go. But I mean, those land releases that, again, focusing on the suburbs, where with any, with hopefully as well that. And that generates more business districts that can operate locally, so people can work within their communities rather than having to go to the city as a necessity. Because the reality is, I think even the infrastructure it is in Hobart just doesn't support excess, an influx of cars, which is realistically what most people have to rely on, because they don't have a drain system. Metro does an amazing job with the resources they have.
Yep.
But we're really limited on mass migration of people coming to the city through public transport. So if you're just to throw in a bunch of residential accommodation in Hobart, I don't think that would service the problem very well.
Fair enough. That's a very good out of school.
Well, it came from that. I remember that opinion now. It came from after the earthquakes of New Zealand. Was it Auckland, or what was the city that got
Christchurch?
Was it Christchurch? I remember I was at a conference, and it was like several years after it had happened, and they had an expert that was sharing what was surprising. What surprised them out of that circumstance, because what happened with Christchurch, they had a first world country that had a catastrophe.
Yep.
Which meant that they had money, they had ingenuity, they had people with skills and all that kind of stuff, but it meant that it gave them an opportunity to rethink the way a city's designed, because obviously they still had all these different people that needed to be serviced. But could we look at it as a different way? Could it be different than a grid? Could it be? Do we look at capping the height of buildings and spreading it over longer surfaces? How do we position our hospitals and public networks, etc., to be able to make it a lot more viable? So this isn't really going to lead anywhere specific for me, but I remember that conversation around. There's an insight to my brain, everyone.
I remember all the shipping container shops and stuff that were popping up in places, and people were going and they were having the bicycles that would made the projector start, and then people were just joining in the way the city operated was becoming quite a different place. So yeah, it is quite an interesting idea to think like this is how they've bounced back from adversity.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Kind of like this is our chance to reset and go again.
Mm. Well, but I mean, back to Tassie and our locals. I mean, it is hard for tenants at the moment, and I mean, our company's seeing it as well.
Is that what we started this conversation on?
I think so. We're sort of bringing you back down. Bring
it back in.
And there's no two ways around that. I mean, the reps from the tenants union. I mean, they're doing everything they can. Even the institutes, they're trying to push everything they can. I think though a lot of different industries sort of feel like they're at loggerheads, they're all, they all have the same intention, which is to provide a better opportunity of housing for local Tasmanians. And I think that's a perspective that we have to remember.
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well when you said that just chucking a blanket over it and trying to fix this problem with just some simple thoughts isn't the way to go about it. It's clearly there's a reason, there's a crisis, and clearly there are things that need to be done. Obviously, we don't know the answers. We can just chuck in our opinions, which I'm glad that you jumped off the fence and decided to pop it in there, John. That we're here, we can talk, we can say what we like and get it out there. We actually had heaps more to talk about today, but we kind of did really well just then, boys.
Oh, do we?
Oh, looks like we'll save the next two topics for the next episode.
Well, I had a little game I wanted to play with you guys. I was going to try and have a little loggerheads, like a little suburb showdown. I wanted to kind of throw a showdown at you and see what you could come up with. But perhaps we'll save that for another time. I might even come up with a little audio intro, kind of like a wow suburb showdown.
Well, let's look forward to that in the future episodes.
Well, I've done my research, so I can relax now. I've been like, hey guys, I contributed.
Yeah.
So I know that you've got a deadline of 15 days to come up with some content, John.
It's we're going to be pushing it. It's going to run real close.
And that's because we've actually got a special guest next week, which is going to be fun.
Yes, we do. Can you tell us about that, Pat?
Yeah, sure. So we've got Sarah Bell coming in next week. Well, actually, she's going to be on the phone with us, which is going to be great. So Sarah runs an AI robot company that features in the real estate space. Yeah, I know you're going straight to Terminator. I can just tell it. But yeah, so she's going to give us an insight as to...
Sorry, mate. She's going to give us an insight
as to how robots can help us in the real estate industry, what they'll mean for consumers, what it actually means for employees of real estate agencies. So it's going to be a little bit
with me if you want to live.
Going to be a little bit different next week. But get all your jokes out now because I think it's not professional to do it in front of Sarah. We might not be
allowed to talk next week.
Aaron and I will be returning on episode 8.
And the sad thing is I can't reach their levels to turn their mics off.
But actually, no, I'm excited to hear Sarah's perspective. She's there's some pretty cool stuff they're rolling out.
Yeah, so look, we're like we said in episode 1, we're trying to get some special guests and some people to talk on different topics and Sarah's going to be our second guest. If you haven't listened to our first guest, it was actually Jason from Domain in episode 2. So head back and find that episode because it was a really good insight as to the Hobart marketplace. But yeah, look forward to next week.
And one other thing, call to John. Call to John now.
John Connor.
Sorry, guys.
Pat's walking away, but as Pat walks away, we just want to thank you for listening. Sorry that we're just really excited. There was a new Terminator trailer last week as well.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen
That actually did look pretty good.
It did look pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
No, so we're now on iTunes, Spotify. Were there any other? I think it's
Google Cast?
Anchor or
Yeah, and Google Cast. right
Google
now.
Cast. So we're on lots of different services. So find us on either of those. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Shout out to Samuel Morey and Pat Sun, our
Two number one listeners.
Exactly. Parker will be very excited to hear this in the car, and you won't be able to leave until it finishes.
Nope.
Cool. All right, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Till next
a
time.
lot.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
414 Real Estate has been operating within the northern suburbs of Hobart since 2006. With their innovative approach to marketing and managing your property, they have all your property needs covered. Find out more by visiting them today at 414.com.au.
As a family-run business, First National Real Estate McGregor understands that the property market can be stressful. However, with a strong team in both sales and rentals, we are here to guide you through the property maze. Find out more today at mcgregorfn.com.